Morning, everyone. How is everyone doing today? Just thought I would give you an introduction as to this next video. Basically, what we're doing is we're going to take a Stanley Bailey number 6 hand plane, and we're going to hot rod it and definitely get it in the ballpark of one of the more boutique hand planes like a Lee Nielsen, and tune it up and get it cutting super good. So I'm just going to take you through that process. Part of it is at my home shop, and then we jump back up here in the end, and we're basically jointing an edge of a piece of ash. So without further ado, let's get started, and I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so first I started out with a really good deal on Fleabay. It had some rust to it, and the tote, the wood on the left, was split in half. So we repaired all of that, and we took all of the black paint off of it, and it's maple. And so then we just completely disassembled the whole thing, cleaning up the rust, letting it soak in WD-40, cleaning up the brass, getting these posts that hold the furniture in. And we were lucky enough to find an plane iron, a Lee Nielsen new old stock plane iron, on eBay as well for a good price. And that's really the key to hot rodding this, is putting this big, thick, excellent tool steel iron into the plane, and it really just takes the plane to the next level. Not always are you going to be able to find a Lee Nielsen iron. So if you're interested in getting a replacement iron for your hand plane, Hock, H-O-C-K, is a company that manufactures similar plane irons. So we're just finishing cleaning up the rest of the parts and whatnot, the screws and everything. The posts for the furniture were stuck inside the cast iron. Obviously, you can see the wood for the plane has been repaired and stripped. It's ready for its finish. The cap iron's cleaned up. All the brass is cleaned up. We soaked that in vinegar, and here we have the new plane iron with the old chip breaker attached to it. And the thickness of the blade really is significant. I almost didn't get that screw on there. It's barely on there. So you can see the difference between the thicknesses of the old iron and the new iron. So we're just, you can see the rust is all gone. Cleaned up the sole and the sides. We'll keep working on that as time goes by. But the majority of the rust is off. There's no dips, no problems really with this. She's a worker. We do take grease, light grease, and any steel screw that's going into the cast iron gets grease on it, which helps in the maintenance and the disassembly. Here is the frog adjustment screw that's going in, and that moves your frog up and back so that you can adjust your opening that the blade comes through. Here, it's back quite a bit because the plane iron is so thick. But here we go. We're going to start putting this baby together. And ready for the tune-up. So we get the posts on for the wood. Like I said, the brass just cleaned up with vinegar and a stainless steel brush and a little steel wool. It came out great. So here we are just snugging these posts up. We're greased up, and this is really a part of the maintenance that you really need to pay attention to with the wood. People have a tendency to crank on those brass nuts on the top. But if your wood is waggling, it means that your posts have actually come loose. So you want to remove your wood and make sure that your steel posts that are going into the cast iron have either, WD-40 works. If they're stuck, just spray some WD-40 and wait a while and just gently try to, with some vice grips or some channel locks or whatnot, just try to work them out and put some grease or a little bit heavier of an oil on there, and then put them back in. But 9 times out of 10, other than dropping it, if something goes wrong with your wood, that is really the reason, because you're loose. And if you're loose on your posts, it'll never tighten down, no matter how much you crank on that brass screw. So here we are getting ready to install the frog. And we've got our frog adjustment, I guess, what would you call it? It's kind of a yoke. It's plate steel. And that is going to ride in the groove on the frog adjustment screw. That frog adjustment screw does not hold the frog in place. You have frog retention screws on washers that come down through the top, and I'll show you that in a minute. But that's what secures the frog. If you want to adjust your frog, you just loosen those top screws and then snug them gently, and then you can get behind it with a screwdriver and adjust your frog up and back until you have it where you want it. You need to make sure that it is parallel to the opening as well. You don't want it at an angle unless you want it at an angle. But I generally, if I'm going to skew something, I'll skew the blade with the adjustment lever that's on top of the frog. My finger covers, my fingers are still busted open. I have to protect them and keep them from getting infected. But this screw gets definitely tightened. That other threaded rod is the blade adjustment rod, which that brass wheel goes on and moves the blade back and forth. Here I'm fiddling around with it. I forgot to put grease on it. And the grease really isn't, I know if you've got grease in there, it's generally not going to, you won't need to keep greasing it. The main thing is you just want to make sure that those posts stay snug. Just do a run through of your plane, just like your chisels. Take out your plane iron and give it a quick sharpen, run it across your 10,000 and strop it and put it back in. If you do that, you're just going to keep getting sharper and sharper. You can see the yoke for that brass, that knurled brass adjustment, the iron adjustment. So here we've got the frog assembly in, and we're just kind of starting in a standard spot. I just put it even with where the sole angle there, and then I kind of go from there, just kind of align that. Because what I'm going to do is adjust to where I have just a enough of an opening to where a very thin piece of curl is going to come out. Here, we've got that yoke sitting on the frog adjustment screw, and it's very intuitive. You'll know where to put that thing. The main thing is that yoke washer needs to sit in that collared part of the screw so that you can move it up and back. Again, that screw does not secure the frog. Okay, so we're getting ready. We're putting our top screws in, and those we definitely had to clean up. They soaked in WD-40 for a few days, and it broke up that rust. And I was able to wire brush them and get them cleaned up. So we're just gonna snug those puppies down. And there we go. So if you look at that plane iron with the chip breaker on there, I generally install my chip breaker just shy of the cutting edge. That would be the back side, the side that is not beveled. Beveled down, the chip breaker goes on the back side of the iron. So we're making sure we're oiled up on our blade skewing lever, if you want to call it that. I doubt that's what it's called, but it moves the blade side to side. So we're just kind of checking everything over here. Okay. Also, to adjust that frog screw, you have to pull that rear tote off. Your screwdriver won't really line up with that frog adjustment screw. Here, I hope you can see it, but you can see that frog. I've got my top screws just snugged, and you can see that moving back and forth. This is such a great design for a hand plane. These were mass produced and since the 1800s. I mean, these are really old. This one is not particularly old. It was probably made in the 50s or the 60s. Blade is 2 3/8 wide. Iron, I'm sorry, it is a blade, but its proper term is a plain iron. So the tote posts we're putting on, greased up, snugged up, and we're getting ready to put this puppy back together. So together she goes. Frog's installed. That's going in, that's turning nicely. If you look in the center of the frog, there's another tapped hole, and that is for a screw that holds the whole works together. It holds the iron, the chip breaker, and the cap iron. So that's another screw that needs to be adjusted because there's a lever on that. It's a sort of a spring type of lever, and there we are. We just put that in there, and you see how that fits on there. That the height of that is very important because you don't want to have that iron too tight, but then again, you don't want it too loose. So you just kind of have to figure that out. So here we're going to put on the brass forward and reverse lever. Now there's a yoke. See that yoke just fell down as my finger came off of it. We're going to lubricate those threads as well, not with grease. You don't want to get too crazy with the oil and the grease. You don't want it to be, slopped around and on the actual body of the plane itself, because the sawdust is going to collect on it, and then you're just stuck with more cleanup. But you really want, I mean, this is kind of if you get this right, it's really a fine adjustment. It works really well. So we're gonna hold that yoke up, and there's a space on this wheel that it will straddle, sort of like the frog adjustment. That yoke will fit in that space between the knurled part and the end of the wheel, if that makes sense. And that yoke goes up through the frog, and there's a little sort of lever type thing that fits in a hole in the iron, and as you turn the wheel, the yoke moves forward and back, and that's what pulls the iron back and forward. So that's why having the proper tension on that cap iron screw is important. So here we're setting the iron in there. The big screw on the chip breaker goes down into a little spot that is meant for that. So we're kind of just checking everything out, and it looks like it's going to work. I was worried a little bit that the blade was going to be too thick and that I would be stuck with the Lee-Nielsen plane iron, but no, it fit perfect, and we're ready to go. It looks like the lever and everything just fits great. Couldn't be happier. Okay, we are assembled. Frogs in, irons in, cap irons on, and we're going to finish the knob, the front knob, and the back tote. This time, since we have this maple, I'm gonna go Chris Killinger snake juice and buff that out, and then I'm gonna put axe wax on top of that and buff that out. I'm not really going for a brand new look. I'm actually going for more of a antique type of look. And I tell you what, I mean, I have to be honest with you. I love the snake juice. Not only does it smell like you could cook a brisket with it, it just it's if you're doing a restoration, it's definitely worth a try. I would do a sample spot before I went whole hog with it, but it doesn't take a lot. You can see that I just poured just a tiny, maybe even less than a capful, and I'm just brushing it. You can use a rag, you can rag it on, you can use your fingers if you want to. I wish it had been more like that and a little bit glossier, but I'm happy with the way it came out. It's more of a flat type of finish, but I'll keep putting the wax on it. And so now we're running out of time here. It's dinner time, and I'm racing against the clock. I'm at the 5-minute warning with dinner, so we're kind of hurrying up here. And you could put lacquer, you could put polyurethane over this. It really doesn't matter. I just didn't want the black paint. Stanley went from rosewood to I think they did some walnut, and then as it got closer to the end of the runs of these things, then it went to maple. And there's nothing wrong with maple, but I would much rather it be rosewood, but I'm okay. It's a worker. You can see that seam where it busted in half. But I don't think the guy really knew what he had, because
That's very nice.
$45. Then $85. And this would be a suitable plane if you just sharpened the bejesus out of the stock iron that came with it. But I just sort of fell into this iron, and for the price, these irons don't come up often. I think you can buy them like with at Highland Hardware, but I don't know, availability is always a problem. Woodcraft and Rockler, I don't know if you can get it through Rockler. Highland Hardware, which has an online presence as well. I believe they carry the Hawk types of irons that would be really just as good as a Lee Nielsen. I'm a big Lee Nielsen fan. Even though I don't own a lot of it, I really appreciate the craftsmanship that goes into those hand planes. So there we are. We are not sharpened, but we're all together, and I made it in for dinner without getting in trouble. Mrs. Castor does not like it when I'm late for dinner, which I can understand. But yeah, I think, for as old as this thing is, and, it still has its patina. I doubt that I'm going to paint this. It's more important for me for this to cut well than it is for it to look great. I'd also recommend a very decent set of flat screwdrivers, especially for the brass and the cap iron. Not having your screwdriver roll out of those slots is going to be key to just keeping those slots from getting burrs and just getting messed up. Not a fan of the slotted screw. All right, we're disassembled again, and we're going to put the axe wax on there. I kind of like to put the axe wax on and then use heat on it, just because it goes a little differently than warming up your handle and then putting the axe wax on. I really don't want a burned effect on the handle in case I hold the torch a little bit too close to the knob or the tote. So anyway, I just grab some of it and put it on liberally. And it really does a good job preserving. Both of these products are very good. The snake juice takes a while to dry. So if you put the snake juice on and wipe it off or whatever and come back even in an hour and try to use it, your hands are going to smell like snake juice, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but my hands are in enough stuff over the course of a day that I just want my hands to not smell like any kind of chemical. So we're finishing up with the axe wax, and have to say I really am liking the way it looks. I wish it had stayed with a little bit more gloss to it like this, but it is what it is. I may take some beeswax and put it on the buffer and see what that does. I doubt that I'm going to put polyurethane or anything like that on it. Finishes are completely a personal preference, no matter what you're doing. It's always a good idea to do a sample before you start taking on your actual workpiece, because then you kind of know what's going to happen. Even in making things, I'll make a sample piece before I start running the stock. And there you have it. Beautiful. So here we're not getting that flame close. We're just trying to create some heat to just kind of activate the beeswax that's in the axe wax. And we're just going from there. All right, back on she goes. Putting our brass nuts on. Snugging it up. And basically, just remember there's a counterbore in there in the wood. Cranking on this brass is just not the way to go. Because when you crank on these brass nuts, first of all, you run the risk of bunging up the slot. But second of all, you're going to start pushing that counterbore deeper. And if your post loosens up, you're just messing up your wood on your hand plane. So anyway, it's dinner time. Gotta go. All right, here we are. We've got the water stones out, and we're gonna take this thing from basically 400 to 10,000. First thing I'm gonna do is start at 400 and just work on the flat side. Just try and get that back, even if it's just an eighth of an inch back, start working on the flat up towards the apex of the angle, and get that as smooth as possible. And I'll work on that back as I go up in the grits. But basically I'm just going back and forth on the flat, trying to utilize the whole stone so you don't wear out your stone in one place. It's no big deal if you wear a divot in your stone. They make diamond plates to resurface these stones. At home, I just love the water stones. Just absolutely dig them. It's relaxing to sharpen. Now we're working on the bevel. Basically just gonna follow that angle, and keep it as even as possible. And just working our way up through the grits. Really no micro bevel, no nothing, just taking it from 400 to 10,000. And this is basically the regimen. You can see it's starting to, come on, focus. You can see either side, and then you can see the apex of the bevel starting to smooth out. The factory grind in there, that sort of oval shape, it means that they use a wheel. Basically, that's the arc that the wheel puts in the blade. So it's sort of a hollow grind. The smoother you can get that apex on both sides of the angle, the better it's going to cut. So we've worked our way up through the grits, and here's 10,000. It's like I said, it's the same. Work the flat side, work the bevel side. I'm not going to bore you with the 4 or 5 other stones that I went through, but now we're basically honing, and that's what this is, the giant tune-up, really. No matter which kind of iron you're using, if you want your hand plane to perform, you have got to get these irons sharp. I mean, even if you only go to, like, say 2,000, do the best job that you can. I have found in recent months, after getting these 10,000, the 10,000 stones, that it just takes it to 11, you know. It takes it to the next level, to where you can, the pushing through the wood is just effortless once your plane is tuned up and you've gone through the rigmarole of setting your frog and setting your iron and getting all the stuff on your hand plane dialed in. So anyway, there we are. We are sharp, and I will see you at the shop. All right. One last look. That's what a finished edge should look like. And that chip breaker is going to go up farther towards the apex. But that's sharp and honed and ready to rock. So back to the bench. Have a piece of ash, I believe it's 2 inches thick, and we're just kind of jointing on the edge, working this plane in. It still needs a little adjustment, but you can see the curls that are coming off of this thing. They're just fantastic. I would ultimately like to be able to not have drag like that. It should be fairly effortless. So we're getting there with it. It's just a process of getting used to the plane, because it adjusts out different than my number 7 and all the rest of my planes. So I'm kind of tweaking very slight adjustments to the back and forth of the blade, trying to get the blade angle right, the frog up and back. But we're getting very, very close. I'm looking at the blade angle right now, and I'm making just a slight blade angle adjustment. And you can see that it really improved the cut. And I mean, it was just super slight, a little bit to the left. But we're getting awesome curl. And I'm not really expending a terrible amount of energy. There's a good one. Anyway, how to take a Stanley Bailey number 6 and hot rod it up and just put it on the next level as far as how it's cutting and how she goes. So I just love hand planes. It just gets you so much closer to the work. Anyway, if you've hung out for all of this, thank you so much. Thank you to the new subscribers. Thank you to everyone who pays attention to my channel in any way. I really appreciate it. This is what I love. And as long as I'm cutting wood, I'm a happy guy. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.